A while ago, I watched this video from Joe Scott where he makes an infinite zoom animation starting with a picture of himself, then generating the next image by resizing it and asking Photoshop's AI to fill in the empty space. He did this again and again until he got 100 of them. Then he started animating, and that was really tedious to say the least. So I wanted to help in case he or anybody really wants to do something like that. I wrote to Joe to ask for his images but got no reply, so I procedurally generated some instead. In this video, I'll teach you how to code this app that generates some images and does the infinite zoom. I also tested it with AI images I made myself in Photoshop, and I think it works great. It also fixes the stutter problem Joe was facing, so if you know how to reach him, he might want to know this thing exists. Anyway, start your coding editors and let's zoom into some code. Get it? Because the app is gonna... No.
Gonna code, debug, and have fun. Coding with Radu, coding with Radu. Gonna prototype and design. Coding with Radu, coding with Radu. Let's code now.
I'm using Visual Studio Code as my editor, and it's open here in an empty folder. Let's make the first file index.html, and I'm going to begin with basic syntax. So first the doc type, and then the HTML opening and closing tags, and inside the head section with the title of Infinite Zoom. Now the body, I'm just gonna leave it empty for now. Let's save and open this in a browser to test. I'm using Google Chrome, and you can see the title there appearing, and it's an empty document. The reason I want to have this empty is because I'm going to begin to add elements to the body dynamically using JavaScript. So we will create many different images to have a transition from one to the next, and we will procedurally generate those and add them to the body as well. So the body will contain this script tag only for now. And in it, we start writing JavaScript. And I'm going to pretend I already have my image object there. Let's just call it my image and initialize it and tell it that I would like to add it to the document body, like so. So these are main functionalities that we want my image object to have. And I will implement it in a separate file. So a different script called myimage.js, a JavaScript file. And we can create this file by control clicking in VS Code. Now, my image object is going to be a class here, and the constructor, I'm going to pass a width and a height, and by default, YouTube works with this size, and I think that I'm going to work with those values as well. And we will use a canvas to generate some content on it, and I'm going to create it like so, and set its width and height value to the parameters from the constructor. And now to draw on this canvas, we need to get the 2D context of the canvas like this. And this CTX now has all the methods that we want to draw on it, whatever we want. Now, what I'm going to do is delegate this to a separate method. Let's call it draw random background. And I'm going to implement it here below. And it's just going to draw a rectangle covering the whole canvas, but the color is going to be random. So let me first just take width and height out of this canvas object so that I can use them without typing this.canvas.width all the time. And the hue is going to be a random value between 0 and 360. So math.random gives us a value between 0 and 1, If we multiply by 360, it's going to be a random value between 0 and 360. And we set the fill style to HSL of $, the hue, close the curly brace, and then 100% for the saturation and 50% for the lightness. And we close the backtick now. So make sure you're using backticks here, otherwise this syntax won't work for passing the hue inside of the string. Now let's fill a rect with this. So starting at 0, 0, width and height. And we are done with this method, which actually can be a private method as well, because this myImage object calls it internally also. And the add_to method doesn't need to be private because this one is called from outside. The parent parameter will append the child and it will be this canvas. So here when we say append to the body. And now if we save and refresh that page, we are going to see this. And refresh, refresh, refresh. It doesn't fit on my screen. You can see I have these scroll bars appearing here. So we could add here also a class to this canvas, a CSS style, so that we make it a little bit smaller and it fits nicely on our page. This helper method is what we'll use. So here, after we add it to the body, add class stage. We'll need to create a CSS class with this name. And I'll do it in a separate file. So let me link here styles.css, like so, and control click to create this file. The stage class starts with the dot, stage, and then I'm going to give it a border, 2-pixel border, solid. It's going to default to black, and half the width, half the height for the width and height. Save and refresh, and now it fits here on the screen. Let me align this to center. So I'm going to go up here and add some style for the body as well with text align center. Save, refresh, and it's now here like this. Now this procedurally generated image is very boring. You can play with this a lot and add all kind of things. I think I showed you how to make houses, trees, Christmas trees, I don't know, cars, whatever. You can check the channel for more creative things, but you can also try your own input here. I'm going to keep it simple and draw a grid of circles over this just to give an idea that something is there. So let's go back to my image and make this draw random background a little bit more complex. I will set the fill style to be the different hue, like the opposite hue of this one that we have here. And we can get that by saying HSL and then inside of this hue plus 180 and then modulo 360 if we want to get it in the same range. And same values for the saturation and lightness. Now with these, we are going to loop with X starting at 1/6 of the width and then going all the way to the end, increasing by 1/3 of the width. I want 3 circles horizontally and vertically the same thing with Y relative to the height. Now I'm going to fix the radius here when drawing these circles, 100 pixels, and let's begin the path and arc. X, Y, radius. These are the parameters where the circle is going to be. And to draw a full circle using the arc method, we start at the 0 angle and go all the way to 360. So 2 pi in radians because that's how the arc method accepts the values to be. And fill. Now if we save and refresh, we're going to get this more intricate pattern there. Nice, but we want many of them. So I'm going to go back to index.html, and instead of one image, I will keep this code here for reference, but we will generate many of them. So initialize images, let's say we want 100 of them, and now we loop through all of them. So for each image, we will add it to the body, like we did here on top, and the same thing for the style. So we add the class like this. And the initialize images function needs to be something we implement next. Now we don't need this anymore. So I remove it and initialize images given a number of images. It's going to set up an empty array, and looping from 0 to that number, we add a new image each time we push it to that array. And we return the array at the end so that it becomes my images here. Now if we save and refresh, we are going to see many of them, but I would like to see them as thumbnails, smaller, and many of them in a grid. So let's replace this class from stage to image thumb. And in styles CSS, I'm going to define a class for the image thumbnail. Let's say 20% width. Save. And this is what we get. Now I'm going to add also a little bit of a margin here as well, 20 pixels. And this looks much better, I think. Okay, now we want the images to be somehow related to each other. So this one from here should be drawn in the middle of this one here. And then the resulting image here to the next one there, and so on. So we do that by going here when creating the image and giving it a center image to work with. Now, if I is 0, we don't need to give it anything. So we only give it for the second, third, and so on. And what we do give it is the previous image at I minus 1. Now, there's no support for this, obviously, because the parameters here would be width, and that would screw things up. But here, we can put the first parameter center image equals to null by default. And after drawing this random background, if there is a center image, we can draw center image given this value. And I make it private again because it's something that this object does internally here. So draw center image needs a little bit of work, but not much. So the width is going to be 1/3 of the canvas width, and I'm going to calculate it here. And the same thing goes for the height. Now the X and Y value where we start, it's actually the same offset, the width and the height. So X is the width, Y is the height. I just like to name variables like this because now when we call the draw image method, it's clear that we're going to give it the canvas of this center image, X, Y, width, and height. So these parameters, that's what they mean, the X and Y and the width and the height of the image that we pass here. And the draw image method accepts working with canvases as well. Now, if we save and refresh, we're going to get this. So the first image is like that, and then you can see it inside of the center image. And then this one goes inside of this third image, and so on and so on and so on. So it's what we need, really. But now we're missing that stage where we do the animation at the top, and I'm just going to go to index.html and add a canvas to the body. So the canvas ID is going to be stage, that's how we will refer to, and I'm going to give it these same properties for the width and height. And then under it, I'm going to add a button for doing the zoom. So I pass it this zoom function that we'll need to implement, and it's going to say zoom on top of the button. Now, if we want this to have the same properties as this, what we had previously, we have to change this dot here into a hashtag because we now refer to the element with the ID stage, not a class stage that we are actually not using anywhere at the moment. So if we save and refresh, we're going to get this, but nothing works yet. So we need to go to index.html here. After we generate those images, I'm going to start working with the stage canvas. So I'm going to get its 2D context and start animating using an offset variable. So this offset starts at 0 and then increments slowly, and then it's going to take different images from my images and display them on the canvas one by one. But this offset, I'm going to increase it at using floating point values. So it's not going to increase by 1 at each frame, because if it would increase by 1, in 1 second it would go like 60 images and we don't see anything. So let's see how we would implement this zoom function here. The index of the image that we want to use, I'm going to take it to be the whole part of this number. So I'm flooring this number. If it will be 1.7, then it's just going to take 1, and that means it's the second image in the array because indexing starts at 0. And then let's take that image and tell it to draw itself on the context. Now, we don't have this draw method implemented yet. We will soon. But now, increasing the offset by something, let's say 0.01, and then I'm going to make here a check. If I am still able to display images, if the offset is less than how many images I have, then I will request animation frame zoom. And what this means is that it's going to call zoom again and again and again. And it's going to try to do it 60 times per second. So it's going to take a little bit more than a second for the images to change from one to another at the moment, because this offset will take a while to go from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3. But it will work. And then otherwise, I'm just going to not loop and say offset is 0. So we reset this offset, and the next time we press this button is going to start zooming again if we want to see the animation one more time. Now we're missing this draw method still, so let's go there next to add to and draw on a given context. We just draw the image, this canvas at 0, 0. This is the top left corner. And now if we save and refresh and press zoom, we see this first one, and then the second, and then the third, and then the fourth. And one problem is that I can still press zoom now. And if I press it like many, many times, this is going to go like crazy because it's going to add here more and more calls to this and more loops. And that button shouldn't really be pressable anymore when it has been pressed until the animation ends. So I'm going to go here, give it an ID of zoom button. And when we press it, the first thing we do is disable it. And then when we are at the end here and we reset the offset, I'm going to enable it again. Now, let's test by increasing this value to something like 0.2 and show these images faster, because I don't want to wait until the end. Okay, yeah. And now if I click again, it's going to start again with this one. So it works. You can see the button is disabled while the animation is running. I liked the previous speed, 0.01, and now we can think about how to make this animation smooth. Like, if you think about what is happening currently, we are displaying the first one, and then the second one, and then the third one, but the first one should really move, scale, and become the second one, so to speak. And we can think about how to scale the image here after we have it. We can calculate a percent value using this index here and the offset. So the index is always going to be smaller or equal to the offset. And when the offset becomes one more than the index changes. So if you take the difference, you can get a value between 0 and 1. And I'm going to set this scalar to be equal to this percent for now, just to see what happens. Now with this scalar, I'm going to modify the width. According to the stage width, I will multiply it with this scalar. And the height is going to be the same for the stage height. So I want to shrink basically the images or grow the images because the percent is 0 in the beginning. And it's going to grow from small to fitting the size of the stage. And to be in the center of the stage always, I also need to modify the left side like this and the top side. So when we do this, the image is going to stay in the center as it's scaling, if that makes sense. And here I'm going to pass left top, width, and height. So new parameters for this image. And these will tell where to draw the image on the canvas. And I have to copy this, go to my image, and add them, and replace this 0, 0 default left and top to whatever left and top is there, and add the width and height as well because the draw image supports it. And now if we save and refresh, press zoom, we see the image growing, and the next one. It should actually be in reverse. So it should be zooming out, right? So if we want this to zoom out, scalar here has to be 1 minus this percent. And now it zooms out. But I don't want it to zoom from 1 to 0. Actually, the first time we showed this image, it should be bigger than what it is. It should focus on the middle part, zoom out until it fits perfectly, so scaling to 1 at the end, and then it switches to this one, but this should be already zoomed to 3 times its size because this should be in the middle. So actually the scalar shouldn't go from 1 to 0. It should go from 3 to 1. From 3 to 1. So what we can do here is multiply 1 minus percent by 2. This will make it be a value between 2 and 0. And if we add 1 here, it's going to be between 3 and 1. So saving, refresh, and there it is. It works, but it does have this stutter effect. Every time a new image changes, it kind of slows down a bit. What's the deal with that? Well, you can see what happens that when resizing the image like this, the things on the side of the image seem to speed up as they are approaching the center. And then the speed resets because of the next image appearing there. So actually, to get this animation smooth, we need to constantly increase the speed in some way. Like, think about it like this. The first time I'm going to animate here, the next animation speed should match what the apparent speed of the first shrinking had at the end of it when the transition happened. It's not easy to explain this, but to me, it's obvious that this is some exponential thing. And I tried playing with it. So I tried writing here speed is equal to 0.01 of 2 to the power index here. So this is my exponential function. And this speed is now what I'm going to use for increasing the offset. Maybe it's better if I put them here so that they are next to each other and related. And if I now save and refresh and press zoom, look what happens. Something crazy, right? Well, the problem is we're now increasing the speed exponentially, right? But look again what happens to this circle here. It kind of moves at the same speed and almost at the same speed. It does still do a little bit of a stutter when changing, but not much. It's hardly noticeable. You can actually remove it entirely by playing with this exponent more. And because the image in the middle is 3 times less than the one at the top, a value of 3 will remove that entirely. So I just want you to focus on the first thing that happens there. That circle, that one blue circle here, it just moves really smoothly until the middle. But when it does that, when it moves smoothly towards the middle, it will reach the middle. It will very quickly disappear, and same thing will happen for all of them, including the large image if you visualize that there is the one very big one there at the end. So we solved now this transition problem between the images, but the speed is just increasing so incredibly much that we need to do something about it. And what we need to do is here, instead of using the speed directly, undo this exponential effect. So I'm going to say 1 divided by 3 to the power offset. I'm using offset because this is the floating point value here and we want the transition to be smooth. And then multiply that by the speed. And now if you save and refresh and zoom, you can see it's as expected, or at least what I would like to get. So not sure if this is really clear what happened, and my explanation might not have been the best. Also, it was a little bit of trial and error. I felt that this exponential is needed here and that it needs to be undone, but I didn't really realize that value 3 is important until I played with those. Then it made sense. But yeah, sometimes you do some trial and error and only then it becomes apparent how the formula should be. Now I'm gonna have to end this video here, but next time I'll show you how to add the functionality to load our own images as well. I would have liked to film this in one shot, but I didn't have time to get those images ready, so next time. Thanks for watching and see you guys.